Sadly, there's only 11 virtuous mental factors. Some days that makes me quite sad. But the third one has really been getting my attention these days, and it doesn't get a lot of press in a certain way. And it's the one that is consideration for others. So this is the beautiful definition from Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature by His Holiness and Venerable Children. And this is how they define it. Consideration for others cares about the effect of our actions on others and avoids negativity for their sake. It enables us to restrain from harmful physical, verbal, and mental actions, acts as the basis for maintaining pure ethical conduct, prevents others from losing faith in us, and causes joy to arise in the minds of others. So, if all of that was running in the back of my mind, in our minds, we'd be in pretty good shape mentally, probably physically too. The rock tumbler would go out of existence. There'd be less to purify. And it would certainly ease our way into creating the causes and conditions for bodhicitta, if that was running all the time. So now I'm going to ask you the most important question I will ask you in your entire life. Who here would knowingly follow a dictator? One hand went up. So remember your answer. So, a dictator. The definition of a dictator is someone who has absolute power, or at least behaves as if they do by bossing around everyone around them. In government, a dictator is a ruler who has total control over a country with no checks or balances to prevent abuse of power. So let's zero in on this one part of that definition. We'll change the wording just a little bit. Has total control over me with no checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. So let me introduce you to someone who's been kicking around with me since beginningless time. So the image changes from day to day. Self-centered thought, Sally. Just hanging around since beginningless time. I bump into her constantly, and it just brings such misery to myself and everyone else when she's in control. And it blocks this mental factor of consideration for others. There's no doubt about that. So I'm going to invite you to look at this at some point in your meditation, but just look at how soon it shows up and how often in the day. Here's an example. So about 4:25, the alarm goes off. And I know I shouldn't hit the snooze button because I have a roommate, but I hit it anyway. And I think, my roommate probably won't hear it. She's a nice person, she'll forgive me anyway. So, it's her fault. I hit the snooze button. Now, the number of times I hit the snooze button is also her fault. So then I get up and I go across to Ananda, and there's about 4 inches of snow on the step. She says, don't shovel it. It's too early in the morning. You're the only one going in the door right now. It's somebody else's job anyway. Don't shovel it. There's plenty of people who can shovel it later on. You're the only one going in. That's a hard one to argue with, but I try and do it. And then the big question is, don't put your shoes on the rack. You're the only one going in at this time of day. Just leave them there. They can trip on those shoes. It doesn't matter. You know, they won't see the shoes in the dark because the light isn't on. Don't move the shoes. And then there's this struggle. So I bend down and I pick up the shoes. It's a struggle. It's a struggle, I'm telling you. And then I go in and I accidentally, it's something weird with this door. And this isn't even her fault. But there's something with the vacuum of the door where it can slam shut and the whole building shakes. Now, she's noticed that some people do this on purpose. But I can tell you that it's usually a case of where people have things in their arms. Would you listen to this? They're carrying something, they're in a hurry, the door slams shut, the whole building shakes. It's not their fault. So then breakfast starts around 7:30, and she notices something. And she says to me, the chanter hasn't put the gong in place. They haven't turned on the sound system. They may not even remember they have to turn on the sound system. And listen, you can't be responsible for everything here. These are adults. They'll figure it out themselves. Don't go over and turn on the sound system. That went off in winds, actually. Got to do something about that one. So it goes on and on and on. Just watch. There's this ongoing struggle. And really, if you start looking at how easy it is to start looking around and giving consideration to others, maybe it's just one person, that brings more ease in the mind than barreling down with these thoughts of don't do it, say no, it's not your turn, you're not on that rota, and all that. That takes a lot of energy and it makes you just darn right crabby. So I saw some things this week, and what's on my mind today, of course, still is the slab pour that took place on the 15th of December. So that was only 2 days ago. And, you know, these are just common examples of what people are doing, but it was so heartwarming to see every single one of these. And it will stay with me, too. So that day, once it got going, I had to go to an appointment that I didn't want to go to, and I had to go, and I was leaving, and I was driving down Spring Valley Road, and I got behind one of the concrete trucks that was heading back to fill up. So he was going slowly. I didn't mind. I thought, I'll get to the appointment in time. And what this guy did was, this is on Tweedy, where there was a part of the road that wasn't so well plowed, and he pulls to the side of the road, stops, and waves me on. I thought, that's very considerate. That was very kind of him. He certainly, you know, his job was more important than mine at that point. He was needing to get back and get more concrete in that truck. And then I don't know how many drivers were involved in the pour. There were technically going to be 15 trucks coming up to do the slab pour. So maybe there were 2 people, you know, maybe there was doubling up. But, you know, they could have decided, any one of those people that morning, you know, we have to go to the Abbey to pour concrete. Do you remember what that road is like? We have to back up that road to deliver the concrete. Any one of them could have said, I'm not doing that job today. I'm phoning in sick. This is just a dumb idea. Besides, it's cold out there. Right? That would be that talking. None of them did that. Of course, maybe someone did. We don't know. But everyone showed up to do their part in a very difficult job, driving backwards up a narrow slope. The most poignant image that stays with me, and I have this on video and maybe some pictures too, I was out there filming at about 20 to 1, so they were about halfway through the pour at that point, maybe a little bit more. And on the far end where they'd already poured, there were these 2 guys on their knees on these slidey things. So they're going across concrete on these slidey things with one of those hand trowels, smoothing out the surface. And they're in this mist that's coming up from the concrete, because when concrete cures, it produces some heat. So it was this misty sort of image with these 2 guys on their hands and knees doing this work in the cold. You know, how much fun is that job, and how hard is that job on your body? When I returned there 2 hours later, those guys were still doing that. You know, again, you'll say, well, they're getting paid to do this job. This is what they do. They've decided to do it. They could have said, forget it. You know, I'm out of here. But they were doing it because they knew that their part was important in the whole pour, which was very important for that team and for the project. And then I was very struck by the one young construction worker who showed up the day before the pour. He had been out sick for a couple of days, and he was back because they had to work like crazy to get that snow off the site again. And the guy was still sick. I asked him how he's feeling. He said, I'm still sick, but they let me come back because I don't have a fever. And he said, this is very important for us to do this job and get it done. Consideration for others. And then the person who went out and bought pizza for all these guys, they were all standing up eating it at one point. They were standing out in the cold having lunch. They usually don't have lunch. And someone went and got them pizza because they knew that they were, needing to get their energy maintained. And then the wisdom of the project manager. So initially the pour was going to happen at the end of November. Then the big push was for Tuesday, the 13th. And it looked like it was going to happen on the 14th. But later on the afternoon of the 13th, the project manager came to me and said, look, we can't do it tomorrow. We've got guys going out sick. If we try and get all this done that we need to do for the pour tomorrow morning, we'll be here until midnight. I don't want these guys getting pneumonia. I don't want people getting hurt. We just have to push it out another day. So again, consideration for, his workers, his employees, knowing that it's simply not worth it to push like that, which is what they usually do. So this mental factor of consideration for others, cultivating this, I think, just look in your own experience. When I look at it, it brings relief rather than fighting something and saying no. And because when we say no to something, or we just think, I'm not going to do it because you're telling me to do it, that kind of mind is so narrow, and we lose perspective of the person in front of us. We lose the opportunity to get the richness of the people around us. And when we start considering others and seeing what their state is, there's so much more that we can learn. And who isn't tired of this? We've known this since beginningless time. And we say that we're not following a dictator. Remember? Well, when that one's engaged, we're following a dictator. Just look and see. And we think we're intelligent and that we would never do something like that. There's no way I'd follow a dictator. Well, so if let's put some effort, now I'm talking to myself, into having this mental factor in my mind more often. It's boring to be bound and caught with this one. It's just boring. And so if you want to use, our natural propensity for excitement and something new and something exciting, let's direct that kind of mind to others, because when we do that, we will have the opportunity to learn something very rich and meaningful. And so they want to do it a different way. Well, let me tell you, I learned something very important probably after 10 years of teaching kids. That took a long time to learn this one. But eventually, it was just too painful to try and teach children how to clean up after an art class. It was just a reason to start drinking alcohol, let me tell you. And so I decided at one point, why don't you show me how you want to do this, but there's one criteria. You can't use a lot of water and you can't use a lot of paper towels. They were all like, okay. And so they flew at it. It took about twice as long. There was no fighting. There was just little people engaged in doing it their way. And I just sat at my desk and took a break, which is what I desperately needed to do. And so, we can really learn from other people if we just get rid of this one. And most important, exactly. Get it out. It's a temporary measure, remember. It's not the final solution. It's not the final solution, but at least it's going to give us a bit of a break. Consideration for others.